Hi, this is Nikki with the Knotted Nest. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the Rustic Snowman Garland. This pattern is easy, level 2. I designed the pattern using Snuggle Puff yarn from WeCrochet, which is a heavy worsted weight, but any worsted weight yarn will work for this pattern. Each snowman is about 6.5 by 3.5 inches, and the finished garland is about 6 feet long. US terms are used. To get the written pattern, which includes a photo tutorial, you can find the free version on my blog at www.knottednest.com. You can also purchase an ad-free printable version of this pattern in my Etsy or Ravelry shops. I will add links to all of those in the description below. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more crochet goodness. Before we get started on the pattern, I just wanted to quickly go over the materials that you will need. I used Snuggle Puff yarn by WeCrochet, which is categorized as a heavy worsted weight yarn. It is technically still a 4 weight, but if you look at the individual strands, they're just a little bit on the thicker side from what you would consider a normal worsted weight. They're a little bit, this particular yarn is a little bit fuzzy, and I just thought it looked good for the snowman, but any worsted weight yarn should be fine for this. Your snowman may come out a tiny bit smaller, and you may need to go down a hook size, but any worsted weight yarn should work. For the hat, you'll need about 15 yards of worsted weight per snowman. For the scarf, a couple of yards of a different color yarn will work. And you also need polyfill or some other stuffing material. Just a small amount is fine. For my garland, I used twine to string the garland. You could use yarn or twine or any kind of string that you like. In the pattern, I use a size F crochet hook. Like I said, if you do choose to use a different size yarn, you might need to adjust the size of your hook. You'll also need a yarn needle, scissors, a stitch marker, and a ruler just to kind of gauge how close you are to the finished size. Each snowman is worked in 2 flat panels, a front panel and a back panel. It's worked in single crochet in rows. And then the hat pieces and the scarf piece are made separately and sewn on. And then you would just lay the 2 flat panels one on top of the other and single crochet around to join them, and stuffing them lightly just to give it a little bit of a 3D effect. Okay, we're going to get started. You're going to need your main color yarn and the size F crochet hook. And we're just going to start off by making a slip knot. And we're going to chain 5. After you've made all 5 chains, we're going to work the first increase in the second chain from the hook. Now normally an increase would be 2 single crochets in the chain, but we're going to do an invisible increase, which is just 1 single crochet under the front loop of the chain. Just make a single crochet under just the front loop, and then the second single crochet you're going to make in that same chain, but under both loops this time. This technique just helps to reduce the gaps in the pattern. You don't have to do it. You could just do a regular increase, which would be just 2 single crochets in the same chain. But I think this produces a nicer, cleaner looking finished product. Okay, in the next 2 chains, you're just going to work 1 single crochet in each chain, working under both loops, just like normal. And then in the final chain, we're going to do another invisible increase. So we're going to work that first single crochet under the front loop only. And then the second single crochet of the increase is going to be under both loops. And that is row 1 complete. You should have 6 stitches. Okay, so to start row 2, we're going to chain 1 and turn. And your first stitch will be worked into the very first stitch that you come to. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And for this row, we're going to start off with an invisible increase in the first stitch and an invisible increase in the second stitch. So for that first stitch, we're going to do the increase under the front loop only, the first single crochet, and then back into that same stitch under both loops, single crochet. That is your first invisible increase. And then we're going to do that again in the second stitch. Under the front loop only, single crochet, and then back into that same stitch under both loops, single crochet. If you don't do this, you just get just some big gaps in the snowman panel, and I think this looks a lot better. And then in the next 2 stitches, just 1 single crochet in each. And then in the second to last stitch, another invisible increase. And in the final stitch, another invisible increase. And that's going to finish row 2, which should give you a total of 10 stitches. To start row 3, we're going to chain 1 and turn. And then it's still the same pattern as row 2, where you're going to place an invisible increase in the first stitch and an invisible increase in the second stitch. And then for the next 6 stitches, you're going to just work 1 single crochet in each stitch. And then you should have 2 stitches left. We're going to work an invisible increase in each of the last 2 stitches to finish row 3. You should have 14 stitches at the end of row 3. Alright, we're getting ready to start row 4. We're going to chain 1 and turn. And for row 4, we're just going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch for a total of 14 stitches. When you get to the end of row 4, you will chain 1 and turn, and then you will repeat the instructions for row 4, meaning 1 single crochet in each stitch, for rows 4 through 8. Okay, we just finished row 8. You can kind of see it starts to sort of curl a little bit, but that's okay. It'll flatten out as you go. We're going to get ready to start row 9. So to do that, you're going to chain 1 and turn. And the next part is going to be to shape the top part of the ball, but we're going to stop right here and place a stitch marker on this side. So after you have turned, going to place a stitch marker on this side of the panel, and this will become the front of your panel. This will be important because we're going to work some decreases, some invisible decreases, and you'll need to know which side you're on to know how to work the decrease. So in crochet, a decrease is just working one stitch over two stitches. We're going to do an invisible decrease, similar to the invisible increase that we did before. So what that means is you're going to insert your hook under just one loop of the first stitch and insert your hook under just one loop of the second stitch. Now, which loop this will be will change throughout the pattern depending on if you're in the front or back, but I specify in the written pattern. So for here, we're on the front side, so we're going to insert our hook under just the front loop, not the back loop, just the front loop of each of those first two stitches. And then you'll yarn over and pull through both of those stitches so that you should have two loops on the hook, and then yarn over and pull through two. And that completes your invisible decrease. And you can kind of see it. It's like a nice clean look. It's not puckered or gapped. So that's why we do the invisible decrease. And then in the next 10 stitches, you're just going to work one single crochet in each of the next 10. And then we're going to finish off row 9 with another invisible decrease. Okay, so we have just 2 stitches left. So we're going to work our last invisible decrease by inserting our hook under the front loop only of the first stitch, front loop only of the second stitch, yarn over, pull through both stitches, and then yarn over and pull through 2. And that completes row 9. You should have a total of 12 stitches. We're going to chain 1 and turn to start row 10. For row 10, we're going to start off with another invisible decrease. And this time, we're now looking at the back of your snowman panel. The stitch marker should be on the other side. But that's the side that we want to look nice. So we're going to work our invisible decrease in the back loop, because that is the side that you will see. So you're going to insert your hook under the back loop only of the first stitch and under the back loop only of the second stitch. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And in the written pattern, I specify, but you can just remember that you will need to work in the back loop if you're looking at the back of the panel, and the front loop if you're looking at the front. And then for the rest of row 10, you're just going to work one single crochet in the next 8 stitches. And you're going to finish off this row with another invisible decrease in the back loop. So once you get to the remaining 2 stitches, the last 2 stitches, that's where you're going to work your invisible decrease in the back loop only. And that's going to complete row 10. You should have a total of 10 stitches for row 10. So moving on to row 11, we'll chain 1 and turn. And row 11 is going to start with an invisible decrease over the first 2 stitches, and then an invisible decrease over the second 2 stitches. So we're working on the front side of the panel, so you'll insert your hook under the front loop only of the first stitch, front loop only of the second stitch, and work that invisible decrease. and do the same thing over the next 2 stitches. And in the next 2 stitches, you're just going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 2. And you should have 4 stitches left. We're going to work an invisible decrease in the next 2. And another invisible decrease over the last 2 stitches. So row 11 would be decrease, decrease, 1 single crochet in the next 2, decrease, decrease. And this should give you a total of 6 stitches. Okay, so we're going to move on to row 12, which will start the second ball, the middle ball of the snowman. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. And to start row 12, we're going to start increasing again. So we're going to work an invisible increase in that first stitch, which remember is just working a single crochet under the front loop and a single crochet under both loops of that same stitch. And then you will just work 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. And we will work another invisible increase in the last stitch. So that's going to complete row 12. You should have 8 stitches in that row. And we're going to chain 1 and turn to start row 13. For row 13, you're going to work an invisible increase in the first stitch, invisible increase in the next stitch. Now you notice that we're always working the invisible increase in that front loop. It doesn't really matter which loop that you do, so for the increases, so we're just always going to work in the front loop. So for row 13, we did invisible increase, and then we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches till we get to the last 2. And we're going to do another invisible increase in the second to last stitch and invisible increase in the last stitch. And that should give you a total of 12 stitches for row 13. We're going to chain 1 and turn to start row 14. Rows 14 and 15 will just be 1 single crochet in each stitch. So I'm going to work rows 14 and 15, and I will meet you at the end of row 15. Alright, so here we are finishing up row 15. Rows 14 and 15 should have 12 stitches. We're going to chain 1 and turn and get ready to start row 16. You can see we're about halfway through the middle ball here. You can see the indent between the bottom and middle ball. And now we're going to start shaping the top of the ball, so we need to start decreasing. So row 16 will start with an invisible decrease. We are on the back of the panel, so we'll need to work our invisible decrease in the back loops of the first 2 stitches. And then for row 16, we're just going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 8 stitches until you get to the last 2 stitches of the row, and then you will work another invisible decrease in the back loop. You should have a total of 10 stitches for row 16. Okay, we chained 1 and turn to start row 17. Row 17 is going to start with an invisible decrease using the front loop only, and then 1 single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches, followed by an invisible decrease in the front loops over the last 2 stitches. So row 17 should have a total of 8 stitches. Okay, we're going to chain 1 and turn to start row 18. Row 18 is going to start with an invisible decrease, and this time it will be in the back loop because we are on the back of the panel. So row 18, invisible decrease in the back loop over the first 2 stitches, and then we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and we're going to finish this row with 1 invisible decrease over the last 2 stitches in the back loop. And then we will chain 1 and turn, so row 18 should have a total of 6 stitches. So row 18 is going to finish the second ball of the snowman, and then row 19 is going to start the top ball or the head. So row 19 is going to start with an invisible increase in the first stitch, and then 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and an invisible increase in the last stitch. So row 19 should have a total of 8 stitches. And so we're going to finish row 19, we'll chain 1 and turn, and start row 20. Row 20 is going to start with an invisible increase in the first stitch, and then 1 single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches, followed by an invisible increase in the last stitch. So row 20 should have a total of 10 stitches, and now we're going to start row 21, which will just be 1 single crochet in each stitch, and finish that with a chain 1 and turn. So row 21 will have 10 stitches. Okay, so we just finished row 21. We're going to chain 1 and turn, and now we're going to start decreasing to shape the top of the head ball. So row 22 is going to start with an invisible decrease. We're on the back of the panel, so we're going to work our invisible decrease in the back loop. So row 22, invisible decrease over the first 2 stitches, then 1 single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches, and we will finish row 22 with an invisible decrease over the last 2 stitches. This should give you a total of 8 stitches for row 22. Okay, we just finished row 22. We're going to chain 1 and turn to start row 23, which is the final row of the snowman body panel. So for row 23, we're going to work an invisible decrease. We're on the front side of the panel, so in the front loops. So invisible decrease over the first 2 stitches. And then we're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and we're going to finish row 23 with an invisible decrease over the last 2 stitches. So row 23 should have a total of 6 stitches. And after this row, you're going to fasten off and weave in your ends. So that is 1 snowman panel complete. For each snowman that you want to make, you're going to need to make 2 of these panels. We're going to start the hat panels. So for each snowman, you're going to make 2 of these hat panels. And you're going to start with the hat color yarn, worsted weight yarn, and your same F hook, and we're going to chain 11. Later on in the pattern, we're going to add some detail to this. We're going to need some extra loops to work into. So to do that, what we're going to do is work into the back bump of the chain, so that leaves the front loops free for detail later. To find the back bump of the chain, you're just going to look at your chain. You would normally see the 2 loops in the shape of a V. You're just going to turn over your chain and there should be a bump on the back, and that's what you're going to work into. So for row 1 of the hat, you're going to slip stitch in the second chain from the hook and slip stitch into the next chain. And then 1 single crochet in the next chain, and 1 single crochet in each of the next 5. And then in the last 2 stitches, you're going to slip stitch in each one. So row 1 of the hat would be slip stitch, 6 single crochets, slip stitch, slip stitch. And that's going to be a total of 10 stitches for row 1. And we're going to chain 1 and turn. For row 2, we're going to slip stitch in each of the first 2 stitches. This is going to work the brim part of your hat. We want to keep it nice and flat, so we're just slip stitching across so we don't give it any height. And then you're going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. And the last 2 stitches you will leave unworked. So this should give you a total of 8 stitches for row 2 of the hat. And after that last single crochet, we're just going to chain 1 and turn to start row 3. For row 3 of the hat panel, just going to work 1 single crochet in the first 6 stitches and leave those last 2 slip stitches unworked for a total of 6 stitches. And we're going to chain one and turn at the end of this row as well. And we're going to start the fourth and final row of the hat panel. So you're going to work one single crochet in each of the first 2 stitches. And then in the next stitch, we're going to work an invisible increase. And in the next stitch, another invisible increase. And then one single crochet in each of the last 2 stitches. So row 4 will be a total of 8 stitches. And this just gives the top of the hat a little bit of a curve, make it look cute. And you're just going to fasten off and weave in your ends. And like I said before, you'll need to make 2 of these hat panels. And our next step is going to be to make the scarf. You're only going to need to make 1. So we're going to start with our scarf yarn and the same F hook that we've been using. You're going to make a slip hook and chain 19. So we're only going to be putting the scarf on the front panel. That's why you only need to make 1. Alright, after you've got all 19 chains made, we're going to work in the back bump of the chain, just like for the hat. We're going to do 1 single crochet in the second chain from the hook, and then 1 single crochet in each of the next 6 chains. And in the next chain, we will work 2 single crochet, so an increase. And this will just give the scarf a little bit of a bend so that there's sort of the neck part and then the arm of the scarf. And then we're just going to work 1 single crochet in each of the remaining 10 chains. So you should have a total of 19 stitches. And that's all you need to do for the scarf. We're going to add, if you want to, you can add a little bit of fringe to just give it some detail. But you're just going to fasten off at the end of this row. Okay, so you can see how we have a short part of the scarf and then a long part. The short part is what will go across the neck of the snowman, and the longer part is where we're going to attach our fringe. So to make the fringe, I just cut a few short pieces of yarn and threaded them onto a yarn needle, and then just looped them through the long end, the long arm of the scarf. And then you can do as many as you like. I just did 2. And then you're just going to tie each one off and trim. Alright, we are ready to assemble our panels. Just a tip, I did find it helpful to steam block the hat and scarf pieces before I attached the panels together. I just found it easier to line things up. So you're going to make 2 panels. You should have 1 panel with a hat and a scarf, that'll be your front, and 1 panel with just the hat, that will be your back. And the first step is going to be to attach each hat panel to a snowman body panel. To do this, you're going to line up the 6 stitches on the top of the snowman panel with the 8 stitches on the bottom of the hat panel. We're only going to be sewing into the back loop of the hat panel. This will leave the front loop open for some detail work later. And then you can sew through, using a whip stitch, the 2 loops of the snowman panel stitches. And like I said, I did 8 stitches of the hat, the 8 center stitches, just to make it a little bit more stable. And then you're just going to whip stitch through that back loop of the hat and both loops of the snowman until you have the whole thing secured. To attach the scarf, you're going to just attach this to the whichever panel you want to be the front. You're going to use a length of the scarf color yarn, and we're just going to sew back and forth across wherever you want, wherever it looks good to have the scarf lay. I kind of positioned it between the top ball and the middle ball, and just sew back and forth to a couple of stitches just to secure it. And we're only going to stitch across the short arm. We're going to leave the long arm loose. Okay, so you should have 2 panels complete. The front panel will have a scarf and hat. The back panel will just have a hat. And you're going to take the 2 panels and lay one on top of the other with the wrong sides facing in. And we're going to get ready to join the 2 panels to finish our snowman. So with the right side facing you, with the front side facing you, you're going to attach the main color yarn just below the brim on the left side, and you're going to insert your hook through both panels. It's not easy. And then you're going to use your main color yarn and attach it with the slip stitch through both of the panels. Okay, so we're just going to chain 1, and you can tuck that other end to the inside because you won't see that inside part. We're going to start single crocheting through both panels to join the 2 panels together. Now you're going to be working into the sides of the row, so you kind of just need to do your best to evenly space the single crochets. It's pretty forgiving. I did find that on the bigger curves you might need to work 2 single crochets in one space so that it doesn't pucker or pull. So in this part it's just sort of eyeball it wherever you feel like looks good to add a single crochet. That's where you should do it. When you get to the point where the 2 balls come together, I like to work a slip stitch here instead of a single crochet, just so that that indent appears more defined. so that you're able to see the definition between the two, the head and the body. And I did that for each of the joints between the snowman balls. So you're just going to continue single crocheting through both panels around the snowman, and we're going to stop with about 2 inches left, and we'll add some stuffing. Okay, so we have about 2 inches to go to finish joining the snowman panels. So we're going to stop here and add a little bit of stuffing. I think it looks best to just go very light on this, just a tiny bit of stuffing, and make sure you kind of push it in there and get it evenly spread out. Honestly, they look really cute even without any stuffing, but I like having that little bit of a round belly on him. Before you finish sewing these together, if you wanted to add any other details like some safety eyes or felt nose or buttons or anything else you want to add, it's easiest if you do it now before we finish joining the panels. Alright, so we're just going to finish single crocheting around the 2 snowman body panels, slip stitching at each indent until we get back to the bottom of the hat, and then we'll switch colors to join the hat. Alright, on the very last single crochet of joining the body panels, you're going to stop with 2 stitches or 2 loops still on the hook and pull through with the hat color yarn, and then we're going to get ready to join the 2 hat panels. So with these ends here, you can just cut off the main color yarn and tie a little knot there to make sure that those two, that it doesn't come unraveled, and then you can just tuck the ends into the inside of the snowman because you won't see them. Okay, so we finished joining the hat color yarn, and now we're going to join the hat panels. This is one of those places where it just sort of looks, you just got to place the stitches where it looks best to you. In the written pattern, I included a little schematic of how I worked my stitches. So I started out by working 1 single crochet on the bottom of the brim, and then I worked 3 single crochets in one space at the sort of the edge of the brim to kind of make it, give it like a corner. But it's up to you, whatever looks good to you. On this, I also did a slip stitch at the indent where the brim of the hat meets the tall part, same as we did on the snowman ball joints, just to give that indentation some definition. And then at the top corners of the hat, I also worked 2 single crochets in one space in order to give the corner a little definition. So after you've completely joined the hat panel, if you remember when we sewed the hat panel onto the snowman body panel, we left those front stitches unworked so that we could add some detail later, and that's what we're going to do now. We're going to just keep continuing to single crochet across using those unused front loops to work our single crochets into, and this just gives it a little bit more definition between the snowman head and the hat. And when you get back to the beginning, you're just going to slip stitch to the first single crochet that you made and fasten off and weave in that last little end, and your snowman is complete. If you want to string your snowman onto a garland, I used about 60 inches of twine and a large yarn needle, and then you're just going to use your needle to thread through the back of your snowman near the top, and I found it best to do it behind two places at the top of the hat. It just hung better that way. And I did 5 snowmen for a 60-inch garland. But you can use these snowmen for a wreath, for decorations, however you can think of to use them. So that is the Rustic Snowman Garland pattern. I hope you enjoyed making this with me, and please visit my website, www.knottednest.com, for more free patterns and tutorials.